Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror film from the United States, English language, released in the year 2018, directed by Corin Hardy, and this film is called The Nun. So The Nun starts off with the suicide of a nun in Romania. This catches the attention of the Vatican, who want to investigate because there are very mysterious circumstances. Obviously, it's a massive sin to commit suicide in the eyes of the Lord, and so the Vatican want to know what's happened because there has been a little bit of a story behind this that is suggests something of the paranormal. So they send out this father, who is also an expert in investigating strange occurrences, and a woman who is almost becoming a nun. She just got to do her vows and then she's in. So this is a way to actually get ahead in what she's trying to do. So they travel to Romania, they meet the man that actually found the nun's body, and this is where they start to unravel an ancient evil that is belonging to this area of Romania that has been unleashed, and in order to save everybody involved, they're going to have to get the evil presence back to where it came from, and whether or not they can do that is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on The Nun. This is a very interesting film, and I didn't really have a lot of excitement coming into it, but I had a lot of curiosity because this is an expansion of the world of The Conjuring. Now, The Conjuring I thought was an overrated horror film, but it was still very effective in what it was trying to do, and so expanding on that idea, you've got the nun in this film that was a very scary presence in The Conjuring, but kind of giving the nun a little bit of background and kind of a little bit of depth. I like when these films kind of expand their worlds, and so that was one reason why I wanted to see it, and another reason is because Corin Hardy was the director. Now, Corin Hardy directed an absolutely fantastic film called The Hallow. The Hallow was a brilliant Irish monster film that I thought was incredibly effective, and so for that reason I really wanted to see what Corin Hardy could produce in a much bigger budget movie. And so when it comes to mainstream Hollywood horror films, they are very hit and miss, but recently there have been some decent ones. I really like Get Out. There's been Get Out, you've got Don't Breathe. So these movies that have come along that have actually breathed fresh air into the mainstream Hollywood horror genre. But then you've also got films like The Slender Man, which was absolutely horrific in all the wrong ways, and so that reason I was umming and ahhing. It's kind of the good is weighed by the bad, and so I was teetering on the edge whether or not mainstream Hollywood has what it takes or they don't. And so I was hoping that The Nun would be a movie that you could add to the pile of very memorable horror films, but unfortunately it goes into one of the bitter disappointments. It's not as bad as The Slender Man, but I still thought it was a very bad film because of the fact that it was very lazy, and that comes as a big disappointment because I believe Corin Hardy is so much better than what he produces in this movie. Now we'll go through the positives. There are only a few positives, but the biggest positive is that Corin Hardy really knows how to create an environment, how to create an atmosphere. This is a very gothic-like atmosphere. It's a very dark atmosphere, and I thought it matched with the overall tone that the movie wanted, and this is evident in his film The Hallow. I thought The Hallow was once again a very dark film, so this director has an eye for creating a very nightmarish world, and I think that The Nun really captures that gothic nightmarish world, and I just thought, okay, you're going into the depths of hell. At the start of the film I thought, alright, he really sets the standard, and so as production is concerned, this is a very talented director, and he shows his talent through this movie, and the evil sort of quality that the movie has just seeps through the screen. I also thought that the overall menacing presence to the movie, in some areas it looked okay, and I thought that the soundtrack in some aspects of the film was fairly decent as well, but unfortunately that is where the positives stop, and this is where the negatives start. Now, as I said, this is a very lazy horror film because it doesn't do what Roman Polanski or Alfred Hitchcock did. What those great directors do is they don't do jump scares. They do movies that slowly creep up on you, and before you know it, you're engulfed in a world that's suffocating you. You basically can't breathe, and because it's crept up on you, that was the scariest part, is that you didn't know that the monster was behind you, but it was there all along. But when you know the monster is in front of you, as is the case with The Nun, it doesn't become that scary, and so the movie does have a very shallow feel to it as far as horror is concerned because it relies way too much on jump scares. Now, what I mean by jump scares is the cattle prod horror, in that it's not scaring you because it's unnerving, it's scaring you because it takes you off guard, it startles you, and so that's not a true horror experience. Startling someone, basically making them jump, saying boo really loud, that is these days what makes a horror film, and this is why mainstream Hollywood horror in particular is failing so miserably, is because they don't understand the true essence of what a horror film is. A horror film is creating horror in the sense of the story, creating horror in the sense of the characters, not creating horror in a way that it's just very lazy, and that laziness gives the indication that the director is not very confident that he can actually scare an audience, which is a very surprising element because Corin Hardy can scare an audience. I thought The Hallow was scary without going over the top as far as jump scares scares are concerned. So The Nun relies on really cheap tricks way too much, and because they're so frequent, you don't really appreciate the sporadic good moments the movie has. There are some jump scares that are actually quite effective, but because there's so many of them, you kind of desensitise to it, and after a while you know what's around the corner. So when you know when a jump scare is going to come about, it's not as scary. And so just the way the camera angles in and then it comes back, you know exactly what's going to be behind the character. And yes, it happens. And I thought, alright, well, this is a movie that I was expecting from a much lesser director, and so I know Corin Hardy is capable of so much more, and it is evident that he's good as far as his production is concerned, but as far as the horror element, I just thought it was lacking quite considerably. On top of that, you've got some soundtrack that was very out of place, and the biggest thing that was out of place is the added humour that the movie has. And towards the end, there's a few funny moments that happen that took me off guard, and I didn't laugh at them because I wasn't expecting it. Is that this is not a horror comedy, but when you have a serious tone to a film and all of a sudden this character is throwing out these silly one-liners, it doesn't work. It feels so out of place. And so the movie just has these elements where they just throw it in and they hope that the audience is going to like it, but unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned, I just thought there was a lot of unevenness to this film. There's a lot of disjointed qualities that I thought that Corin Hardy didn't really... he wasn't really that decisive in what he wanted to create. And so, as I said, he's a good director, so that is by far the most disappointing aspect of this movie. And I thought the overall look of the nun, the look of the nun was okay when you didn't see her that much, but after a while you get to see her a lot, and then that devalues the horror aspect as well. And so the ending was very mediocre, and unfortunately it's an incredibly mediocre horror film. And so it's not as bad as The Slender Man, but it's still a movie that I came away from feeling very disappointed. I didn't have massive expectations, but I just thought that, you know, a continuation from the world of The Conjuring, and on top of that, a good director, I was expecting something that was actually a lot better than it was. It's clear and evident that these, basically the makers of The Conjuring had nothing to do with this film, because it feels like a completely different movie. It feels like a movie of a much lesser value, and for that reason, it's not coming recommended. So overall for The Nun, going to give this one 1.5 stars, bitterly disappointed. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.